to Professor Юрая Sipko's presentation. He is director of the Institute of Economic Research at the Slovak Academy of Sciences. Professor Sipko, the floor is yours. We cannot hear your voice, so maybe you should unmute your microphone. We cannot hear you. Please unmute your mic. That's okay.
Okay, fine. Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me a floor. Many greetings from lovely Slovakia. We have in Bratislava very foggy days, but in the north part, there are lovely sunny days. So if you are interested during the COVID pandemic to go to the mountains, they always welcome. Some years ago, I was invited by the former director, Professor Ruslan Grinberg, for the conference in Moscow. And during this conference, I met also Madam Professor Svetlana Glinkina, and we discussed a lot about the present and the future development in the area of Central Eastern as well as South Eastern European countries. This is the reason why I pick up some topic what we started to discuss. It's actually 6 years ago. So today I would like to concentrate for some critical issue where we are now and what is necessary to do for the future. So I set up some question for me. What is the COVID impact for these countries? What are the differences? And there are some disparities, main challenges, and what about the critical feature for the future development? Some of this question has been answered during the whole day, during this very, I think, very productive presentation of my colleagues. And now I would like to go to the first my slide, and I would like to say something about it. In October 2018, 75 countries of the world economy, they were on the trajectory of the economic growth, 75. 1 year later, 90% of the whole world economy countries, they were on the trajectory of the declining economic growth. So the COVID-19 actually accelerate the process, relatively long period process of recovery of the world economy. In the US, it was the longest period of the economic recovery in comparison with 1854, the longest period, as well as in Eurozone countries, more than 7 years economic growth. So the COVID actually has accelerated the process of recession. But the question is, what the COVID discover? And the answer is very simple. The COVID show us that there is a crisis of public health sector, there is humanitarian crisis, there is a crisis of job, there is a crisis economic and social. So there are very many crises, and many countries, including the most developed countries, they have never been prepared for this kind of pandemic, even if very many researchers and institutions, those who are concentrated for the future development, mention the pandemic will come. During those days, they didn't discuss about the pandemic COVID-19, but they discussed potential pandemic. So this pandemic has huge impact, but the most difficult is there is the impact on the people. There are very many, those people who are not anymore with us, and the critical moment in this development is the all institution around the world, they just started to do on the fiscal side expansionary fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy will have huge impact for internal imbalances. In addition, it will have huge impact for the future development as well as for the external imbalances. So this COVID has huge impact, it's not restrictive, and even now, very many international monetary and financial, including economic institutions, they encourage the authorities around the globe to increase additional financial stimulus, mostly for the public health, as well as to cover very important issue related to medical, social, and the other issues. So I would like to say here that it was a very good example of cooperation in terms of monetary policy. Very many central banks around the globe, they adopted harmonization in terms of expansionary monetary policy. They significantly increased the interest rate in order to support economic growth. I took here the latest development of the Central Eastern and Southeastern European countries. It's 1 month old, but many of you they presented, including a friend of mine, Peter Havlik. So I just would like to show that we are at the most depressing time in terms of recession. But what we have seen here, that even these countries, they are much better than some countries within the Eurozone countries. We have some countries like Spain, Italy, Portugal, they have even higher recession this year. The only country in the world which will have on the positive trajectory of growth, there is China. The expectation is that China at the end of this year will have 5% of economic growth in comparison with the other countries which are on the negative territory. And I would like to mention here that even 2021, almost none country will receive the economic growth before the pandemic, before the outbreak of the pandemic. So there is a long way for the recovery, and still we are in the process of the second wave, and there are very many unknown variables. The recovery is uneven, very uncertain, and if we compare what was happened at the beginning of this year until now, we have the highest level of index of economic uncertainty, of financial uncertainty, of geopolitical uncertainty, including the global trade uncertainty. So we have mostly uncertainties, and there is a time when we are moving, what will be the next? I think the COVID is also the opportunity to change the strategy for the future development. So I put all these countries, but majority they presented. I would like to mention here that Europe is here. It's very, very high I would say, decrease economic growth, and the other countries, it's uneven. In 2020-21, it's uneven. The best country, it's according to the data, it's Slovakia. It's always was, but including the Czech Republic. But the question is, what about the quality of growth, and what about the supply chain and the other issues? All forecasts for the near and medium-term development, they are hypothetical. We really don't know what will be tomorrow and week later or months later. We do not know what will be the next year, but this data, they clearly said that none country will be into 2021 with economic growth as was before the pandemic. And here there is for Southeastern European country, we might see here, and it's a huge, mostly for those countries, they are dependent on tourism, and they have impact on the external imbalances. Then the question is, as Peter Havlik mentioned, where we are now in terms of conversion process. But talking about the conversion process, we always measure by the purchasing power parity. And we have seen here that those countries which are a member of EU, they are much better than those countries which are Central Eastern European, but the worst, they are Western Balkan. Even if they are on the trajectory of linear increasing, still there is a long way to go. For 30 years, it's a long way, it's odyssey, when they will go. And I would like to mention here that even the most developed new member countries or within the Eurozone and EU, still they have big income disparity, and this disparity is going to be even larger than it was before the outbreak of the global financial crisis. But the most important issue here, that the disparity mostly is on the regional level. So the question is, what we should to do, and it was actually discussion with the Professor Glynkinej 6 years ago. What is the most important in order to support conversion and economic growth? A majority economists, researchers, and policymakers, they agreed the key issue is how to eliminate infrastructure gaps. So in this slide, we might see the main issue regarding the infrastructure, and we might compare here that in new member countries of EU, it's a far way to go into compare with the oldest countries or highly developed countries within the European Union. So when we will continue with this very low level development of infrastructure, we will suffer for the future. And this might be the key issue, how to manage this disparity, these balances between the EU countries and even between new member countries and within the Central Eastern European countries and Southeastern European countries. So the question is how to do it. One of the most important issues, which it's called for policymakers, there is the question to build infrastructure and to accelerate the process infrastructure. It was exactly what it was after the Second World War. There was a huge investment for infrastructure, and all these countries, they significantly increase economic growth, but at the same time, they unbelievable, they decrease public debt. So here is the question, how to manage infrastructure and what about the resources? And there are very many supporting ideas. The most important is to use also public-private partnership, no only public sources, because public sources will be very, very limited due to the relatively very low level of GDP growth, as well as for relatively very high level of public debt. So in order to answer this question, there is also always the question how to find the sources. And very many researchers, they came to the conclusion that the most important is to have stock of capital. And if we compare on this slide where we are now in comparison with EU, and then Central Eastern European countries and those which are no Central Eastern but South European and then Western Balkans, you might see the level of additional sources. It's relatively very, very low. So those countries, they have additional facilities which they might use to financing, but the other they do not have. So the question is, where are the money? In addition here, we might also see the quality of overall infrastructure. We might compare here in EU, and then other big countries, and then this comparison, but it's a relatively very low level because the infrastructure, it's always opened the door for foreign direct investment, and foreign direct investment is huge contribution to the quality of standard of living, as well as to increase and its value added, like in some countries, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, for export. So we have public-private partnership, and then we might also compare here. And what I found here in this chart, since 1990 up to now, that it was very, very promising here, beginning when euro was created, again before the outbreak of the global financial crisis, but now we are on the downward track. So the question is, we have very low level of interest rate, we have very low level of investment, we have very low level of investment. So how we can support economic growth if we do not have investment? There is a new, I think, approach which is necessary to solve the problem. Now we have higher debt, but lower investment. Before the crisis, we have relatively high debt, but high investment. But now we have higher the debt and the lower investment. And there is a critical issue, what is necessary to do in the near future. No investment. Where are the investments? Most probably they are in tax haven. Infrastructure in Central Eastern Europe and its comparison with EU countries. So we might see here again the future. If we see here 2020 and 2030, we might come to the conclusion the situation will almost the same. Slightly they will decrease most developed countries, EU, like Czech Republic, Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. But the other countries, Western Balkan, very, very slow increase, even in the next 10 years, but there is a very, very positive scenario. So the question is, what is behind this relatively less successful process? And the specialists who are dealing with management of effectiveness on public investment, they came to the conclusion then by using all these kind of factors, there is really big difference in terms of governance. We are talking about procurement, we are talking the flexibility, administrative issues, and if we are analyzing all these 15 factors, we will come to the conclusion that in all, I would say, all European countries, there are many factors. They are very, very encouraging for the other availability and fiscal rules entirely. So here it's a long way to go again. After 30 years to move from central plan to market economy, still there are many open questions how to manage. Even between the new member countries EU and Western Balkan, there are almost no big difference. So there is informal constraint for the more than 30 years in terms of the transparency, corporate governance, and all issues related to including corruption.
Professor, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay, so I just, new generations, yeah. Conclusion, where do we stand? We have COVID, we have climate problems, we have weather disaster, how to navigate. As my predecessor said, it's time to create new model with 3 pillars, social, green, and smart economy, both public and private partnership, distribution effect, opportunity for all, not only for the part of the people, create strategy for climate resilient and recovery and digitalization economy, save the planet for the next generation, and transformation with 3 pillars, and also to follow the new approach. And there is a challenge for the future generation, organic food. This is picture from the Russia, and there is the best production of the Russia, and it's the best on the commodity trade in Chicago. And today we have discussion about on the behalf or remembrance of Professor Svetlana Glinkina. And yesterday passed away the most famous soccer player in the world. So I would like to stop here. And if you have any question, many thanks for invitation me. I highly appreciate all who organized this conference. It's very knowledgeable. It's very encouraging for the future cooperation. And I would like to follow the cooperation in near and from the medium-term development from my position.
Thank you very much. This was again a very concise presentation, and I'm sure there will be many questions for it. But now we have to switch immediately to the next presentation. But before that, I would like to ask, okay, that's it.